Hey ladies and gentlemen, it's Frostbyte, and one of these coins is not like the other. Today we're going to be talking about these two coins. We're going to talk about which one's real, which one's fake. But before we do that, we're going to go over some design elements. We're going to talk about the history of the coin. We're going to talk about its run, the various types, some of the design elements and changes that happened during its life cycle. We'll talk a little bit about its depiction and what the symbology means, and then we'll get into identifying pieces of this coin that help give this away as a fake. So you'll be looking at these. At the very end, I'm going to make a special announcement regarding what's going to happen with the fake coin and where it's going to go. All right, stay tuned. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's Frostbyte, and I told you we're going to have a good show today. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the Standing Liberty Quarter. Now, the Standard Liberty Quarter is one of my favorite designs in AU condition. I absolutely can't stand this coin if it's worn out. One of the elements that I don't like about it is that it's just kind of this flat mirror. But when it looks like this, it's a gorgeous coin. And you can't deny its beauty and design. But that wasn't always the case. In fact, in 1916, when this coin was created, it didn't take long for the mint to acquire special changes that they wanted to make the following year. Design element changes take it from a type 1 to a type 2. And I happen to have a type 1 right here. So I'm going to go ahead and set this one right here. And you'll see a little bit of a difference between the two. So what you'll see is the chainmail is gone. You'll see that bare breast shows out over the right-hand side of Lady Liberty. And if I flip this over on the reverse, we're going to see something else on this coin that makes it different. And you're going to notice that those 3 stars are gone, and that the eagle actually sits a little bit lower, and the spacing between United States of America is greater. This is a type 1, this is a type 2. So something for you to pay attention to. But again, we'll get back to these two particular coins and give you a minute to kind of look at these and see if you can see anything wrong with either one of them. All right, now the run of this particular coin was 1916 to 1930, and there were years in which this coin wasn't minted at certain mints. And they're going to kind of go along with the design elements and what many people like to call the type 3 of this. Now, that's not really a type 3, it's just a design element change. In fact, that design element change is called OB4, or obverse variety 4. And what that variety was down here in the dates. So you'll see that the 1924 here actually sits on the pedestal. It actually sits out. The problem with that design element is that it wore off really quickly, and designers and collectors alike didn't like that because it wore off really fast. And after a year or two, you couldn't even tell what year this particular coin was. And that was a really bad choice for designers. So in 1925, they changed to the recess date. But there's some things you want to know about 1925. Number one, it was only Philadelphia. In 1926, Denver jumped on board and did the recess date. And then it wasn't until 1927 that San Francisco would be on board. Now, there are missing years in this particular run. And so you need to know which years those were. There's actually a cool story about that. Not going to talk about that yet. Maybe another episode, but you'll have to come back and check that out. All right. So we talked about the type 1. We talked about the breast. We talked about the chainmail that was added to become type 2. We talked about the recess dating, which some people call the type 3. But we really haven't talked about Mr. McNeil, who was the designer of this particular coin. Now, throughout his career, he spent a lot of time between the United States and Europe. But in 1900, he came back and started working on some elements. And in 1915, he started working on this to replace the Barber series that had come just prior to this. So again, we talk about 2 major design element changes in 1916. And this is, again, just a gorgeous coin when it's in AU condition. All right, so we've talked a little bit about the history. I want to talk a little bit about the symbology. So how many of you have heard the name Doris Doscher? Now, Doris Doscher is also known as the girl on the quarter, and she was the inspiration for Lady Liberty. And Mr. McNeil is the one who utilized her as the kind of the evident body, just like Adolf Weinman utilized his friend's wife. There is one thing for sure, and that is the positioning and the image on the coin stood for something very particular. Now we look at this and we might not be able to notice that, but what we see is we see her looking to the east, and she's holding a shield. And the reason that she was looking to the east, because in 1916, World War I was raging in Europe, and the US wanted to show a symbolization of peace. But the shield shows that they were ready to defend themselves if need be. So if they were called into the war, beware, they were ready. So this is part of the symbolization behind the standard Liberty Quarter. All right, so I talked a little about symbology, talked a little bit about the run, talked a little bit about the coin. Let's talk about some measurements. 24.3 millimeters in diameter, 6.25 grams. Now, I want you to pay attention to the 6.25 grams, because right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove these two coins from the scope, and I'm going to put my trusty little scale here. Now, this is a small little scale, and it only goes out to the tenths, but I'm not going to tell you which coin this is. So you're going to see 6.2, and if I pull the other one up, you're going to see 6.3. Well, 6.2. So both the coins weigh about the same. Both coins are approximately the same diameter. However, well, let's put that one back over there. Make sure we're putting them back where they go. But there are some different things that we want to talk about. Now, when I pick these up, actually, let me pull these around. Let me show you this first. The thing that I want you to see is I want you to look at the thickness. Now, you really don't see much in the line of thickness. Now, there's a little bit of a difference in one of these, but really nothing major. Nothing really kind of stands out along that edge. You'll notice some variability in one of them, and we'll kind of show that here in just a second. So let's go ahead and set that 28 there, and let's go ahead and set that back over here. Now, I haven't done the ping test. One of them definitely sounds funny, but what I want to do is I want to look at the design elements of this. So when you look at these two coins side by side, first glance, first look at, they look pretty close. Now, if you are a coin enthusiast, or you're a numismatist, or you have any understanding of the design elements of the Standing Liberty Quarter, there might be a couple things that look a little bit odd to you. Remember that in 1925, we have the recessed date, so the dates are right. But if we look at the numbers, one of the numbers just doesn't look right. It just doesn't meet criteria. If we look at some of the fields, the areas up at the top around the shield, we're going to notice something very particular. We're going to notice some design elements that just don't match, like the leaf, the laurel in the right hand, holding the piece of fabric that comes into her hand. We'll notice that one has a little bit thicker design element, and it's just not quite the same. They're close, but they're just not quite the same. When we look at the serifs on the B of Liberty, we're going to notice there's a little bit of a difference between the upper and the lower portions of that B. When we look at the T and we look at the Y, we're going to notice some slight differences, but where we really see it is in the field underneath the T of Liberty. If you look at the right-hand side, you're going to see what looks like tooling marks. It's going to be really grainy. It's going to be really open, very porous. There's going to be some lateral lines. They look this way. But there's also another major element in this particular coin that stands out. When you look at the lettering is a little bit off. There's some things between the trust on the right-hand side. If you look at that T, you're going to notice that on the left-hand side, there's the block letter of T, where on the right-hand side, it's a little bit lighter, a little less cryptic. You're going to notice the lines in the stars themselves. When you look at the stars, you'll see the pattern. One is a little bit thin, has kind of a more wispy center, whereas the middle one is thick and the line is solid. This kind of line comes down, out a little bit, and back in. You'll notice this side over here, it comes out, in, and then back down. So the alignment of the stars isn't quite right. And then again, if you look at that date, you're definitely going to notice some differences in the date itself. Now, I want you to look at the rim. Around the rim, you'll notice a thickness with the rim, and that is another issue. One of these is too thin. It doesn't have the thickness that it needs. And if you look at the placement of the head and you look at some of the elements of the head, you're going to notice that there's a couple things that just don't fit. They're a little bit mushy. They don't quite fit together. So when we flip these over, you're going to notice that there's a little bit of a difference in the writing, and you're looking a little bit at the stars. Now, the stars are pretty close on the reverse. In fact, I couldn't tell any difference on the reverse on these particular items. But there are some elements within the eagle itself that just don't quite match up. Now, all in all, the reverse was hard for me to really identify anything other than looking at the fields and looking at the area around the eagle itself. You can tell that some of it seems like it was polished, while other pieces seem really rough and gruff. You look at the design elements inside, it kind of looks like it's been cleaned. Whereas here, again, this coin has been cleaned. But when you look at the design elements around, you can see they kind of just look a little bit heavy and worn. They just don't look quite right to me. But I'll be honest with you, the reverse was hard for me to really see really major differences. There is one major difference in the crook of the eagle's neck. When you're looking right here in this one, the eagle's neck is pretty straight, whereas this one has a little bit more of a crook. You can see the back of the eagle's head. But again, these are little itty-bitty design elements that help you understand that the coin is wrong. But the major tell on this one, at least the major tell in my book, there's other things that are going wrong. But the date is for certain. And then you look over here in this area right here, and you're going to see it just that field just does not look right. All right, well, I told you at the very end I had a little bit of a surprise for you. And this coin right here obviously is the fake. This coin is authentic. This coin came to me from a friend. This coin also came to me from a friend. I told you early in the video that there was a surprise about this particular coin, and this coin is going to be going to Jack Young. So I'm going to donate this coin to Jack Young for his review. I'll request it back when he's done, but I want him to be able to do a full investigation, really look into this coin, find all the specifics on this coin, because this is a pretty good fake and it needs to be looked at very carefully. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you've enjoyed this. Again, fake, real. Hope you figured it out. Hope you were able to identify it without all the information. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, like, subscribe, hit that thumbs up. It's free to you, but it really helps me. Take care of yourselves, be well, and I will see you in the streams. Take care.